I am going to read this to you exactly how it was written down. My name is Mike, and I'm here to share a new story with you guys. I heard this from a friend of mine. Without wasting any more time, let's get straight into today's event. Please overlook any mistakes in the details of the story. This is what my friend's father had to say. This goes back quite a few years. A relative of mine lived in this obscure, run-down part of the state. She was my aunt, related by marriage. She was a woman from a very poor family. Her husband had passed away a few years before these events took place, and she had 3 sons and 5 daughters. Providing for such a huge household was honestly a really tough job for her. My aunt didn't have much formal education. She had only studied enough to be able to read and understand newspapers and various books, but she had a massive passion for reading. Whenever she got her hands on a book, newspaper, or magazine, she would immediately get lost in reading it. To feed the kids, she would do sewing work during the day, and in the evening she'd teach the children the Quran. And all night long she would read old books and newspapers. When this hobby of reading books and papers reached a level of madness, someone gave her some advice. They said, instead of begging for books from here and there, or buying old scrap paper from the recyclers, why not save up some money, get a wagon, buy used books, and turn one room of the house into a library? That way, not only will your hobby of reading be satisfied, but you'll also make some financial income. Lots of people could come to the library to read. The idea really stuck in my aunt's head. Out of sympathy, many people even gave her old books and magazines from their own homes. Wealthy folks in the neighborhood started giving their books to my aunt instead of selling them. My aunt herself brought dozens of books from old street vendors and very quickly built up a pretty decent library. Many kids would rent books from her library. In this way, my aunt very quickly secured a steady source of income. Now, not only did she have books for her own reading, but the stove in the kitchen was kept burning regularly too. Gradually, my aunt quit all her other work and started reading books day and night. Her obsession grew so much that her kids started getting fed up. Her poor daughters would manage the house and also work jobs outside, and my aunt could often be seen sitting in the library all day, completely zoned out. Alongside reading, scouring the used book markets to bring home ancient texts became a serious addiction for her. Eventually, she stopped running the library publicly and locked herself in a small room day and night amidst piles of old books. There used to be income from the library. Seeing his mother locked up in her room like that, her son took the responsibility onto his own shoulders, and they managed to get by somehow. A few months later, however, my aunt's day and night reading stopped. Since I was the same age as her eldest son, Chris, he was my best friend, in addition to being like a brother. We used to visit their house every day. Besides that, I was in a relationship with one of her daughters. My mother liked her a lot. All of my aunt's daughters were very well behaved and simple. Everyone used to praise them highly. Around that time, my mother arranged very simple weddings for 3 of her daughters into good, respectable families, one after another. Now, only 2 daughters were left, one of whom I was in a relationship with. My aunt started focusing on housework again, but yes, at night she would close up her small room and read books. My mother's theory was that maybe she was under a lot of pressure, subconscious pressure due to the burden of the daughters, so maybe she sought refuge in books to escape her problems. Now that she realized only 2 daughters were left, she was somewhat relieved. The boys were growing up too, and they'd do something with their lives. Truly, no sooner had my aunt started paying attention to the house and managing the library again than the situation seemed to change suddenly. Her library suddenly started doing really well. Alongside old books, new books started coming in gradually. Even expensive college course books arrived that regular students couldn't afford to buy. Kids started coming from miles away to buy books. Then, breaking down the wall to the room next to the library, my aunt joined that to the library as well and opened a big stationery store there. It was amazing that kids and students from all over town would come to this library, and aside from renting books, they'd buy school and college supplies from there too. My aunt's sons got busy with their own studies, and 2 or 3 employees took over the burden of managing the library. A flood of money poured into my aunt's room. That old house was now turned into a 3-story building. All the necessary furniture and appliances filled the rooms. The eldest son, my friend, started preparing to go to the West Coast for higher education, but my aunt said, "Let's get the 2 sisters married first, then whatever else." Let me add one more thing. My aunt always spoke very little, but ever since her business grew this big, it was like she had stopped talking completely. She wouldn't speak unless it was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, she stayed silent all day and read all night. Her reading habit was that the light in her room would stay on all night and the door would remain shut. We assumed my aunt was lying in bed buried in her reading, because after that she would sleep until late in the day. So when my aunt forbade Chris from leaving, our happiness knew no bounds. The wedding preparations were done very quickly. Coincidentally, a proposal came for the other girl too, and it was also coincidental that the guy the marriage was being arranged with worked in my office. His name was Dave. Our weddings were finally completed on the same day. My aunt gave dowry with an open heart at the wedding, or rather, you could say, in name of dowry, she gave away an entire house worth of furniture. From the kitchen to the living room, she filled the house with the best of everything. After the wedding, Chris left for the West Coast. The 2 younger sons also started going to university, and my aunt went back to living her life in her old style. Barely a year had passed since the wedding when my aunt fell ill. For a long time, no one even realized she was sick. She had deliberately kept her illness hidden. But when the disease reached a critical stage, she was forced to go to the doctor. I noticed her skin color had turned pale, and she couldn't eat anything. With a lot of persistence from me, she finally went, but she whispered, "Son, no matter how big the sickness is, just don't forbid me from reading. It's truly not possible for me to survive without reading books." I laughed hearing her say this. I started thinking that some people really do develop an addiction to books like this. When I took her to see the doctor, it was revealed that my aunt had liver cancer, and it had already spread quite a bit. Surgery wasn't possible. The few days she had left in life had to be spent resting and following the rules. I called Chris on the West Coast that very day. He had left right after his sister's weddings. Hearing about his mother's illness, he became very worried. He started saying, "Bro, Mom suffered for us all her life. Everything we have today is because of her. No matter what the doctors say, I'm bringing Mom out here. The doctors here are very skilled. You just send Mom over and I'll get her treated here." I told my wife about Chris's suggestion. My aunt's other daughters were all very worried too. Everyone said Chris was right. She should be sent to the West Coast for treatment. When my aunt heard about this decision, she flat out refused. She started slapping her forehead and screaming, "I'm not going anywhere. I will stay right here. Whatever life God has written for me will end here. I won't go anywhere from here." The whole family was on one side, and my aunt's stubbornness was on the other. But how long could my aunt resist? Eventually, she gave one condition. She would go to the West Coast for only 15 days. She would come back right after the checkup. Everyone agreed to that condition. My aunt was sent off to the West Coast. All of my aunt's daughters were at the house. I was there too with my wife. We thought that once we got news about my aunt, we'd all return to our own homes. We were all waiting for the doctor's report. Just then, news came that night that my aunt had passed away immediately upon arriving on the West Coast. May God rest her soul. And Chris was making emergency arrangements to bring her body back home. A wave of crying broke out in the house. My wife nearly fainted from weeping. I went to open the fridge to get a water bottle, but instead of picking up the bottle, I immediately dropped it from my hand. The water bottle was so hot that it burned my hand. For a moment, I didn't even understand what happened. Later, I thought maybe someone had filled the bottle with boiling water. Then, when I went to pick up another bottle from the fridge, that one was just as hot. I called my younger brother-in-law. He said plainly no one heated any water. Still, he asked his crying sisters who put hot water in the fridge. Everyone denied it. A little later, my brother-in-law wanted to get some ice from the fridge, but it felt like he had picked up burning coal instead of ice. He told me about it. I tried to take the ice out. Truly, it looked like ice, but touching it felt intensely hot. This was truly mysterious. A bit later, the situation became like a joke to people. Everyone was touching the ice and water bottles in the fridge to check. I took an egg in my hand just to test it, and the next moment I let it go. The egg fell on the floor and broke. My fingers felt like they were literally scorched. Just as we were all messing around with this mystery of the fridge, my sister-in-law went to the kitchen to give milk to her baby. She screamed as soon as she touched the milk pot. The milk spilled everywhere, and she started thrashing around, holding her hand. Her hand was burning so badly. She panicked and turned on the water tap, but the next moment she screamed again and pulled her hand away. Boiling hot water was coming out of the tap. A terrible panic spread throughout the entire house. Quite a few people checked it out. Terrified, they ran away, unable to do anything. It wasn't just that boiling water was coming from the house taps, but rather anything you touched felt intensely hot. Items kept in the cupboards in the rooms started falling on their own. It felt like some invisible force was expressing its intense rage. Let me tell you one thing. Despite so many members in my aunt's house, no one really prayed properly. My 3 cousins would only come to the mosque on Eid or for Friday prayers. The girls never prayed either. Even I myself never saw my aunt praying. But since today was a house of mourning, Qurans and prayer rugs had been brought into the house. Some people were reading the Quran for the peace of my aunt's soul. It was late afternoon. Many were preparing for evening prayers. A prayer rug was spread in one room, but as soon as the call to prayer happened and people went into that room to pray, they felt intense heat. Everyone backed out of the room immediately. Those who were reading the Quran also became extremely restless because it was impossible to sit on the floor. A little later, all the light bulbs in the house started bursting. The house plunged into darkness, and shadow-like entities started roaming all over the rooms. This is not a made-up story, but a real event, which every single person present there saw and felt. Seeing this terrifying situation, people started running and scrambling. In no time, the house became empty. An elder relative of ours, who was very devout and often performed spiritual healings, arrived right at the time people were fleeing the house in panic. Seeing this state, he asked for the reason behind all this. I told him the whole incident in detail. He entered the house. He looked around and shook his head, remaining silent. There was still a faint light of dusk left in the house. The darkness of night was thickening. That elder asked me to bring 3 or 4 candles and told me to stand outside the house. He also came out, holding the door. I ran and bought candles and matches. The elder had been reciting something this whole time. When I arrived, I saw that he had already cleared the entire house. The neighbors had already fled, and now the family members were all standing outside. The elder, whom we all called Old Man Miller, went straight inside the rooms and placed the candles. The strange thing was, all the bulbs in the house had already burst, but when we tried to light the candles, they kept going out. But surprisingly, the candles Old Man Miller brought lit up just fine. But they were flickering wildly, as if a strong wind was blowing, even though it was intensely humid and hot. By then, everyone had forgotten the grief of my aunt's death. Everyone was thinking about this new calamity. Now even I was feeling afraid in that house. The top 2 floors were empty. Old Man Miller stayed inside that house for a while. He was continuously reciting something. I and my aunt's 2 oldest sons were with him. After a while, Old Man Miller signaled for us to come outside. The three of us came out behind him. Old Man Miller blew on the door of the house and then called us, saying, "Son, lock up the house for now. I'll come here tomorrow during the day, but before coming, I have to meet some people. I am a very ordinary man, son. From the knowledge I received from my elders, I can understand that this house has become unholy. We have to work hard to cleanse it. We have to be careful." After dropping Old Man Miller at his home, I took the two brothers and went to my own house. Everyone in the house had forgotten the mourning for my aunt and was talking about the mysterious situation in her house. Everyone, young and old, learned about these strange and mysterious events. More people gathered at our house to hear about these strange and mysterious events than had come upon hearing the news of my aunt's death. The next morning, I and my aunt's two oldest sons went to Old Man Miller's house. Going there, we learned that Miller had gone to get advice from a spiritual master last night and hadn't returned yet. About 2 hours later, Miller arrived and informed us that an instruction had been received to purify that house. We had to fill a new bucket with water and write some verses on white paper with saffron ink and wash those papers thoroughly in the water of the bucket, and then that water had to be sprinkled on the walls and floors of the house. Old Man Miller gave us that paper which had some verses written on it. My aunt's two sons and I wrote those verses on white paper with saffron ink. We got a bucket from the market, filled it with water, and washed those papers in it, and we headed towards the house with Old Man Miller.
Honestly speaking, just thinking about entering that house now makes me scared. According to Miller, some demons, servants of dark magic and evil spirits, had cast a terrible influence there. Until now, I had only read or heard these things in stories and books, but I was facing something like this in reality for the first time. We entered the house taking God's name. Looking at the condition of the house, it seemed like a terrible rampage had happened there. Every single thing in the rooms was thrown upside down. The curtains were all torn to shreds, as if someone had pulled them down with all their strength. Dishes were lying broken in places. Bedding was overturned. Every single thing was still burning hot like fire, just like yesterday. That same boiling water was still coming out of the taps. Whatever food was there was emitting such a foul smell, as if it had been rotting for years. Besides that, there was a strange, suffocating, ghostly atmosphere inside the house. We entered the first room in fear. Miller filled a mug of water with his own hand and poured it into the corner between two walls. As soon as the water hit, it sounded like we had poured water into a raging fire. There was a hissing sound like fire being extinguished, and immediately the room filled with smoke. Miller had already put blessed amulets around the necks of the three of us. We were getting some courage from the power of those amulets. Otherwise, the three of us couldn't have stood there for a single moment. Apart from these amulets, if Miller hadn't been with us, we wouldn't have been able to enter that house under any circumstances. But because of Miller, we found confidence. Miller signaled us to pour water again. We took God's name and filled a mug of water and poured it in the same spot. This time, not only did smoke come out with a noise, but it seemed as if a crack appeared between the two walls, and something came out from inside, ran to the other corner, and vanished. Immediately, all the glass in the windows of that room shattered into pieces. Miller instantly poured water in the other corner of the room, and right then it felt like an earthquake started. Clanging sounds of breaking glass and rolling dishes started coming from the whole house. In every room, it sounded like someone was running around heavily. Clear footsteps could be heard. Even though it was broad daylight, there was light all around, and there were 4 of us men. The intense fear and panic we felt cannot be explained. But the shocking thing happened when we went to fill the 3rd mug of water. We went and saw the bucket itself had vanished. Miller looked around. We started searching, but the bucket was nowhere to be seen. Miller ran outside. The 3 of us ran after him. From one room to another, from there to a 3rd room, we went everywhere. No bucket. Miller came to the yard and started reciting something. Suddenly, our eyes fell on a flower pot. A part of the bucket handle was visible.
It looked like the bucket was half buried under the soil of the yard. We thought the bucket might be filled with mud here, but as soon as Miller pulled the handle, the bucket came out of the ground effortlessly, completely clean and full of water. Miller started sprinkling that water on the walls of the rooms again. At one point, all the water ran out, and visually there was no benefit. That day, we locked the house again and left. Miller brought instructions from that spiritual master again. This time, the instruction was that at least 20 buckets of water had to be poured within these 2 days. For 2 days, I, my aunt's 2 sons, and Miller only wrote verses with saffron ink and dissolved them in water. We had taken permission from the neighbors next door to do this work. The neighbors had also gone to stay at their relatives' houses out of fear. The instruction from that master was that only when the walls of all rooms cooled down, specifically then my aunt's room should be opened, not before. My aunt's room, where she was always absorbed in reading, was padlocked, and my aunt herself had locked it before leaving. For 2 days, we continued working non-stop in that unbearable environment. Gradually, the smoke stopped rising from the walls, and the amount of destruction decreased. After pouring the 19th bucket, Miller arranged to open the lock on my aunt's room, meaning after preparing the 20th bucket properly, he entered that room. I saw the room for the first time. Although my aunt's entire house had been rebuilt, this room was in the same dilapidated condition as before. There was a dark and suffocating atmosphere inside. An old-fashioned shelf was visible in front. Kept on it were a few very old and tattered books. There was something written in them about various mysterious arts. Right next to the shelf was my aunt's bed. As soon as we moved the bed to pour water on the wall, an old skull and some bones came out from there, which were undoubtedly human bones. Miller quickly sprinkled water in the 4 corners of the room and on the walls. As soon as the water was poured, the house shook again like an earthquake. This time not destruction, but straight-up fire caught on every single thing in the house. We barely managed to get outside and stood looking at that burning house. The amazing thing was that all the furniture in the house burned to ash, but the things that were my aunt's old belongings from before the library was built remained intact, and whatever she had made with her own hands through hard work remained intact. It didn't burn. When the fire completely went out, Miller explained everything to us. Your aunt had found a book among the old books that contained Sifli Ilm, which is called black magic or demonic arts. Your aunt didn't just stop at reading that art, she started practicing it too. Regarding this, she had also contacted a devil worshipper who was an expert in this art. Then your aunt accepted his discipleship for a major demonic ritual. That is why her health was breaking down day by day. But that ritual was only a few months from completion. If a few more months had passed, my aunt herself would have become an expert in this major black magic. She had acquired all this wealth and luxury life through that black magic, and through the manipulation of that black magic, the house had turned into a den of servants, demons, and evil spirits. Because every black magic ritual has its own servants and demons. On top of that, no one ever prayed or read the Quran in this house. But as soon as scripture reading started for her peace after her death, immediately these demons, servants, and evil spirits became restless. And the second reason, my aunt had kept those things under control with her rituals. When that ritual stopped, they became free and came out of my aunt's room to take over the entire house. Hearing all this, we were all stunned. With fearful, pounding hearts, we came home. The same night, the day my aunt's house caught fire, the furniture my wife brought as dowry also caught fire in my house, because this dowry was also bought from the money of my aunt's black magic. I first thought maybe it was a minor accident, but later I learned that on the same night, a fire had also started in my brother-in-law Dave's house. But both of us finally decided that we wouldn't discuss this matter anymore, lest people become too scared to even come to our house.
I am reading this exactly as it was written down. I'm Steve, speaking to you from a small town in upstate. I collected this story from a close friend of mine, and the incident happened to his older brother. I'm going to try to tell it exactly the way my friend told me. If there are any mistakes, please overlook them. Today's event isn't just a story, it's a terrifying truth that happened in the life of my older brother, Alex. A hair-raising experience that pushed him to the very brink of death. Alex was an archaeology student, the kind of guy everyone said had a bright future, but when I saw him after about 5 months, it felt like I was looking at a completely different human being. That afternoon, I was heading to the market. On the way, you have to cross that old bridge in our town. There's a curse attached to the history of that place, too. I heard from my dad that during the terrible flood of '98, that bridge was washed away by the canal waters. It was like nature left its signature of destruction there. Later, of course, a new bridge was built. Anyway, quite a distance from the bridge, I suddenly saw Alex sitting there, dangling his legs. It was exactly as if he was waiting for me. He had a lit cigarette in his hand. He called out to me as soon as he saw me from afar. But when I got close, I was absolutely shocked. What was I seeing? My handsome brother Alex? His face looked so much darker than before, totally lifeless. There were deep, dark circles under his eyes. It was as if his soul had witnessed darkness for long nights. You couldn't even look at him. Anyone who knew my brother would be startled if they saw him. I felt like I had fallen from the sky. The face that used to make everyone say, "Mashallah," looked so grotesque now. In a panicked voice, I asked, "Brother, why are you in this state? What happened to your face? How?" The answer Alex gave me felt like someone had twisted my heart. There was a strange, insane smile in his eyes and a deep emptiness in his voice. "Sam, just be grateful to God that I am standing here talking to you today. You understand?" I was stunned. His words weren't just words. They felt like a horrific confession. I quickly said, "What do you mean, standing here? Grateful for what? What are you saying? I don't understand anything." Then Alex's voice dropped even lower, becoming colder, as he said, "Sam, you know I'm an archaeology student. For my studies, I have to dig into a lot of secret, ancient things. I went for a job just like that, but I had no idea that job would bring such a huge curse into my life. It has basically ruined my life. By the mercy of Allah and through the help of Imam Ibrahim, I am able to stand here and speak to you today. Otherwise, my body might have been taken over by a demon." I was speechless. I just stood there with my mouth open, listening. What kind of event could have happened that wanted to devour Alex's soul? Then Alex started speaking again. "Towards the end of my master's degree at the university, the department professor gave us an assignment on some specific topics. The subject of the assignment was to create a presentation on some old, unknown book or writing. I like digging into old things anyway, so I blindly told the professor I'd make a presentation. I didn't know this task would turn out to be so terrifying in the end. A friend of mine there, Ryan, was also working on a similar type of assignment. As much enthusiasm I had when I started, the work became just as difficult as the days went by. I searched from this library to that library, but I couldn't find any writing or book to my liking, something I could actually use for my assignment. I was getting frustrated. One day, I was sitting on the campus grounds thinking about these things. Just then, Ryan came up from behind, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "Hey, scientist, what's the status of your assignment? Looks like you finished everything and you're just relaxing." But the very next moment,
Seeing the look of frustration on my face, he understood. I said, "Bro, I can't find anything unique. I wanted to give the professor something different this time. It's not happening." Then he gave me a proposal that brought a light of hope into my mind. Ryan's voice was low. He said, "Buddy, my mom's uncle, meaning my grandfather, passed away last year. He was a man of hobbies. He loved reading books. He has a collection of quite a few old books, diaries, and various documentaries collected in his stash. I heard it all from my mom, although I haven't seen it with my own eyes. After he died, the room has just been sitting there like that. Since you have a thesis, an assignment on this topic, if you want, I can arrange for you to use that library." My mind literally danced with joy. With a lot of interest, I told Ryan to arrange everything. Leaving behind the noise and busyness of the city, when Ryan and I arrived at that place to finish our assignment work, it was almost mid-afternoon. The house was at the very edge of the town, a dilapidated one-story building. It was like a terrifying house standing as a witness to time. The house was 100 years old. The plaster had fallen off the walls, revealing the skeleton underneath. Ryan had already told his grandmother everything beforehand. He said we were coming. After we arrived, the old grandmother showed us a room to stay in, a pretty old room. Anyway, we finished a light rest and lunch, then went straight to that library. As soon as we opened the door, a mixed smell of rotting paper hit our noses. It was clear that no one had set foot in here since Ryan's grandfather died. Then we focused on our work. While sifting through piles of books, my eyes suddenly got stuck on a corner of a shelf. A diary, wrapped in a dirty black cloth. As soon as I took it in my hand, a strange feeling ran down my body. As I untied the cloth binding, a sharp stench of grotesque rotting meat hit my nose. Flipping through the pages of the diary, I saw the pages were eaten by worms and dark, patchy stains. The writing seemed familiar to me for some reason, yet incomprehensible, as if some unknown mystery had been recorded. While turning the pages, at one point my heart almost stopped. Several pages were cut out perfectly in a circle, cut in such a way that a small tennis ball could easily be placed in the middle. And right in the center of that hollow space, there was an amulet tied with a pitch-black, blood-red thread.
Seeing this, an uncontrollable curiosity stirred inside me. The moment I reached out my hand to touch the amulet, instantly, a window in the room slammed shut with a loud bang, shaking the whole room. In fear, the diary slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. Hearing the sound, Ryan rushed over and said, "What was that noise, man?" I managed to say in a trembling voice, "Nothing. The window just slammed from the wind, so I got scared, and this diary fell." My chest was pounding. I felt incredibly restless. I could feel a pain in my chest. Suddenly, due to that unbearable pain, I dropped the work for the day and returned to the house. But I couldn't sleep that night. The diary and that amulet were pulling me with an unknown attraction. It was as if my entire being was tied to that thing. So I decided I would read the diary. In the middle of the night, when everything was silent, I walked into the library like a thief, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. I brought the diary back to my own room and locked the door. When I opened the diary with trembling hands and started to read, it felt like a catastrophe had started inside the room. Everything in the air was going haywire. The doors and windows of the room seemed to be shaking. In fear, the diary slipped from my numb hands, and the amulet fell out of the diary onto the floor with a clatter. At that exact moment, I felt an invisible, ice-cold hand grab my throat. Before I could understand anything, a terrifying, invisible force lifted me into the air and threw me with violent rage to the other side of the room. My head hit the wall hard and I lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I discovered myself in bed. The morning light had just broken. My body was burning with fever, and Ryan and his pale-faced grandmother were sitting beside me. I didn't remember anything else. I just asked, "Why am I here like this?" Right then, Ryan said, "Last night, my sleep was broken by your scream. I got up and saw you lying on the floor near the wall beside the bed. I called Grandma and we lifted you onto the bed, but you weren't waking up. Grandma and I poured water on your head, and then you came to. What happened last night? Why were you lying there like that?" I told Ryan the whole incident. Hearing my words, Ryan seemed nervous and also scared. Then, seeing my condition, Ryan set off for home with me that very day. After returning home, my days and nights became kind of upside down. A strange numbness took over my body and mind, as if I had no control over myself. The days were passing in a trance. There was no schedule for eating or drinking. Night after night, I couldn't close my eyes. I would just toss and turn. Then again, the day I slept, I had no sense of day or night. I would spend almost an entire day sleeping straight through. Mom often said that deep in the night, I would walk around the whole house alone in my sleep, or sometimes I would mutter things in such an unintelligible language that it was impossible for anyone in the family to understand. After I fully recovered, I heard many such events from Mom that happened to me, of which I remember nothing. I'll tell you one such event. Listen. Mom said one day deep in the night, she came out of her room to go to the bathroom. Passing by my room, she suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. A suppressed whispering sound was coming from inside the room, as if several people were discussing some important matter in very low voices. Out of curiosity and unknown dread, she peeked through the door of my room. Thinking of what she saw makes her body freeze in fear even today. She saw a very tall, pitch-black shadow figure leaning over my bed, right near my face. No head or face could be made out on the figure. Only countless blood-red eyes were set all over its body, glowing in the darkness. The leg area was long like a snake tail. It looked like it was swimming by waving its tail. At that time, a very nasty, fishy smell was making her want to vomit. Seeing that terrifying scene, she screamed in fear and called my dad. Dad rushed over and saw her trembling and pointing towards my room. Then both of them rushed to me and saw I was unconscious in deep sleep, and my whole body was drenched with sweat. My room was filled with a damp, fishy smell. Just one day after this incident, another terrifying event happened. Apparently, I couldn't be found anywhere. This is also heard from Mom's mouth. Doctors and local spiritual healers were shown for my problem, but no one could give any solution. So, Mom went to my younger uncle's house to talk. Mom says the afternoon after that incident, she went to my younger uncle's house to talk about this problem of mine, to see if there was any good imam he knew of. By the time she returned, the Maghrib Adhan had started. She hurriedly finished her prayers and went to my room to call me. She went and saw I wasn't in the room. Even after searching the whole house thoroughly, no trace of me was found. Mom was scared to death. She was calling out to me, thrashing about almost to the point of fainting. Dad ran outside with a light to look for me, searching the village dirt paths, the woods, the pond, everywhere, and not finding me, he returned home despaired. Mom was then just sitting on the prayer rug, crying and praying to Allah. A whole night passed. No trace of me was found. After the Fajr Adhan, my younger uncle came running to our house panting and gave the news that he had seen me sleeping peacefully on the highest branch of the huge oak tree by our pond. Then everyone together got me down from there.
Believe me, I remember nothing of these events. After that, Mom and Dad searched a lot and brought a scholar named Ibrahim. Imam Ibrahim was an extremely religious and pious man. He performed ruqyah, and through his means, many had attained healing. As soon as he set foot in our house, he sensed the heavy atmosphere. The imam entered my room and stared at me for a while. Then, Telling everyone else in the house to go outside, he sat in front of me and started muttering something. After quite a few minutes, he came out of the room and told my parents, "Your son has been given the evil eye by several bad jinns. Among them, one jinn is extremely powerful and ancient. Removing this jinn won't be easy. However, I can try my best. I can't say if it will work 100%. Pray to Allah." Although he wasn't willing to work at first, he agreed upon everyone's request and told them to work quickly to gather some necessary items. Then, when all arrangements were made, the imam sat down for the treatment. I was made to sit inside a circle drawn in the middle of the room. He ordered everyone except family members to stay outside the house. The imam said, "Whatever happens here, do not be afraid, and keep reciting the surahs I told you about. Under no circumstances can you stop reciting the verses." When the imam started reciting the Ruqya verses and some special prayers, a strange change started inside me. I don't remember anything else. The rest is heard from Mom's mouth. Mom says, as the intensity of the imam's recitation increased, I let out a hideous scream and sat up stiffly. My voice had completely changed. The jinn had appeared in my body. The imam then asked the reason for the jinn possessing my body. I laughed in a broken but deep masculine voice. Hearing that laugh, the blood of everyone in the room froze. Then, in that voice, the jinn laughed a grotesque laugh and said, "This boy has been extremely disrespectful to me. He threw me out of the diary. When I was imprisoned, the owner of this diary gave me the condition that whoever touches and reads this diary will be our slave. This boy has to work on those terms of mine. I will make him my slave and take him with me. No one can stop me, not even you." The imam said, "No, he disturbed you by taking the diary by mistake, but now you cannot stay. You have to let him go." The jinn wasn't agreeing. The imam remained steadfast in his words. A long, terrifying bargaining started with the jinn. The jinn started making distorted gestures, using my body as a medium, and he was inflicting the last bit of torture then. The damp smell inside the room seemed to be increasing. Every breath felt like death. Finally, after much argument, that grotesque power agreed to release me. However, he informed us of some ominous conditions. He had to be given 3 pitch-black male goats, 3 black roosters, and 3 black pigeons wrapped in red cloth. These things had to be left at a specific place so the jinn could sacrifice them later. And the biggest task that had to be done was to destroy that cursed diary. Then the jinn would be released from that bond. Right after giving the conditions, my body shook violently for the last time, and immediately I lost consciousness and collapsed on the ground. After regaining consciousness, the imam took me to that library. He recovered that cursed diary and burned it in fire in front of everyone. The flames flared up aggressively like the jinn's final power, and the jinn was released and left. After that, Dad left those terrifying offerings the jinn wanted at the specific place. From that night on, that horrific nightmare left my life forever. I never faced any trouble again.